Hi, I'm Theo Stocker for Yachting Monthly, and I'm here at the Düsseldorf Boat Show in Germany. And I've come to have a look at Beneteau's latest new boats. And it's really exciting to see that they are reinvigorating what is quite a prestigious line of yachts, the First yachts, which have been around for 30 or so years. And in that time, they've defined what a cruiser racer is meant to be. They are normally relatively accessible, they are fast boats, and they are enjoyable to sail. So you can race them and you can cruise them. Now the 44E behind me is an exciting boat for a couple of reasons. It's one of the biggest First yachts that they've built for a while. And it's also made of fully recyclable fiberglass. Rather than using normal polyester resin or vinyl ester resin, they have used helm resin, which has been developed by the company Arkema. And this means that when the boat reaches the end of its product life, which they think will be about 40 years, which is probably fair for most yachts, they can put it effectively in an oven and the resin will simply melt. About 400 degrees it will melt and run out of the fibres, returning back to a fully usable resin and a fully reusable set of fibres as well. So rather than having to chop it up and put it into landfill, they can simply dismantle the entire boat, recycle it, and build it into new boats or whatever else you want to make with the materials. So let's have a look. So here we are on the outside, underneath the hull of the 44E. You can see it's been given this rather flashy vinyl wrap. Might not be everyone's cup of tea, but vinyl wraps do mean you can do all sorts of interesting graphics with the boat. So you've got a big bowsprit that adds a metre or so to the length overall. And then coming aft here, you can see that we've got some quite large hull windows. So she's taken quite a bit of inspiration from cruising yachts. So it's not just about racing, it's about having luxury on board. And there are two different specs. You can have a performance spec or a comfort spec, sort of cruising luxury. And you can see it's a relatively flat rocket hull, no hard hull chines, nothing to necessarily overly maximise volume over performance and clean runs aft. So you can see here, it's quite a wide stern looking up there, but it's a rounded chine, so you get loads of form stability, but no chines that add a little bit of drag. And then just coming around the pillars here, you can see that we've got twin rudders. And this boat is an electric boat. And interestingly, in order to get enough power and to work better with the twin rudders, you've got two electric pod drives here. So there are two keel draft options on the 44E. This one is the 2 meters 15 draft, or you can have the deep keel 2.6 meter draft for a little bit more stiffness, stability, and to save a little bit of weight because you need less ballast when you've got a longer lever. And then we've got these two electric pod drives from Torqeedo, and they're each 12 kilowatts. So that's a fair amount of power, and they replace or are an alternative to an inboard 60 horsepower diesel engine if you would prefer. But those are almost as far forward as the keel, so you're not going to get much help manoeuvring from those other than rotating the boat as you sort of drive it like a tank. So this is the largest of the current line of Beneteau First yachts, and she's designed by Biscontini. One of the slightly unusual things is that the line of yachts has been drawn by a number of different people, so the smaller boats from 14 up to 27, 14, 18, 24 and 27 Firsts. They are all what used to be Seascape, and then there's a brand new 36 which I'll show you as well, and that was drawn by Samuel Manoir, but this one is from Biscontini, and it focuses a little bit more on luxury than you might have in some of these slightly more stripped out racing boats. But here you have a tender garage or a large stowage room aft. You'll get a small inflatable into there, no problem, which isn't bad for a 44 footer. Large bathing platform with a step up here, and stanchions all the way across the aft end. So this one is fitted with an alternative to, so this is a hardwood from Panama as an alternative to teak. It looks like teak, it feels like teak, but importantly it isn't teak, because teak is very hard to source sustainably, and basically its days are numbered in the marine industry. On board it all looks very comfortable, but you can also see there's a definite angle towards racing. You've got these two fairly large carbon wheels aft and a really good helm position outboard of that, so you can sit there, but actually most of the helming will be done standing up. So you can sit outboard, or when you're heeling you can stand up, look forwards. You've got really good control there. I can reach both primary winches, both for the head sails and the main sheet, and the inner one of those that does all of the halyards as well has also got powered switches. I've got throttle control for both of the electric engines here, and then I've got a large multifunction display chart plotter on both pedestals, and there are some control system buttons on the far one. Also on here, let's have a look at this. So a little telltale that this boat is a performancey boat, if you can see that. It says water ballast starboard, water ballast port side. So nice to have electric buttons for that, but that means that you can add in ballast into the tanks and really increase performance, which is equivalent to having a few crew sitting on the side decks. So if you do want to race, you could probably do so relatively short crewed. So here we've got the winches on starboard side. So you've got a manual 50 outboard and a powered 50 inboard, with a nice little rope in aft, and then all the halyards are led aft. So this is definitely more for short-handed sailing than it is for high performance fully crewed, although there is an option in the performance pack to have some lines led aft to the coach roof. There's this nice little walk around at the aft end of the coaming, and a small step up onto the side deck. So it's not quite stepless access, but it's not far off. And then you've got these really nice clear side decks. Now clearly there are some clutches there for furling lines. Otherwise it's pretty free and clear. You've got a gate for boarding here, and you've got quite a nice high, that's sort of a couple of inch high moulded bulwark there, so it's really secure, and then the water will run aft and off the transom so you don't get smears down your top sides. And then some little hidden windows behind this grille as well. It's a very low, sleek coach roof, which is nice. Now if you're going to have a spray hood, that will come quite a long way forward, which is why the coach roof grab handles here start quite a long way forward. They start forwards of the companionway hatch. It's quite a long way forward. I'd quite like longer ones, but probably makes more sense when the coach roof is mounted. And then here we have jib car tracks on the coach roof. They are towable, and the sheets are led here. It's just moused at the moment, but the sheets go aft under a tunnel, so that keeping the decks nice and clear. So you wouldn't necessarily get that on a pure race boat. For a boat that's meant to be a bit of luxury cruising as well, you've got a bit more refinement. So here at the mast we've got a deck stepped mast, and you can see all the lines are led aft. And then you've got a reasonably powerful gas struck kicker here with some high, low friction rings, and then this quite cool boom here. It's a Park Avenue boom, aluminium. You can see that it's designed to catch the sail as it comes down, keep it nice and neat. And then there's a groove here along to have your stack pack or your lazy jacks running off that, if that's what you want. And you can also run there's two grooves, stack pack, and then you can run an awning off this one to give you some cover from the sun. So I'd imagine a few of these will be sailed in the Mediterranean. Right, going forwards, you've got some fairly sleek dorades there, so you've got some fixed ventilation, which is good. And then a couple of opening hatches here over the forward cabin and the forward heads. This is a 3-cabin, 2 heads version. And then we'll have a look below in a minute, but here's a nice flush mounted hatch for the forward cabin. You can see here you've got just a little drain to drain that, and that flows forwards into the anchor locker, which is quite a nice solution for, because obviously a flush mounted hatch you have to drain around the edges below the level of the deck. And then here we've got a large bow locker and anchor locker, and that's just aft of forestay and forward attachment points, and there's an aperture there for below deck furling, which isn't rigged at the moment, and then a nice integral bow roller. It hasn't got an anchor in it at the moment, but you can see the channel comes aft below the deck, which is very neat. And then right the way forwards there's a little attachment point for your off-wind sails, code zeros and that kind of stuff. So here's the bow locker and anchor locker. It's very deep, as you can see. If I just show you in here, you can see that the anchor locker itself is actually in a watertight compartment. Ooh, nice squeaking noise, that's fine. So the anchor locker and chain goes behind there with a really good big deep drop, and there's even a little anchor point for your bitter end, which is nice. And then here you've got your bow locker with a couple of steps down into it. You can see here that you've got a little bit of electrical distribution for a bow thruster, or sorry, for the anchor windlass. I mean, I don't think this one has a bow thruster. And then you've got a rail to tie your fenders off to, so you don't have to climb down into the bottom if you need to. But this is also where you'll keep your fenders and probably your off-wind sails as well. Okay, walking aft, here we go along the port side deck. In the performance version, you don't necessarily get the wooden decks. You don't get the wooden decks, you just get a deck moulding to save on weight. It's really wide coamings for the cockpit. The cockpit's reasonably high up, so you get good views. Maybe not as sheltered as some might like, but this is a more performance-y, potentially Mediterranean style boat. It's a bit wide to step over there, but then you are led aft here and back into the cockpit with just a couple of very small steps. Stowage is pretty good on board. Here is the top opening access for your tender garage. So once you've shoved your tender in, you can then drop some fenders or whatever kit you want to into it. So it's quite nice to have access from both angles. So the comfort version, cruising version on this one, has a German main sheet system which comes to a single deck pad here, which keeps things nice and clean and tidy. But for poor performance, you would have a full width Cockpit Traveller. Here you've got stowage for your gas bottles, space in there for 2 small gas bottles. It's very much for a boat this size. You could probably fit a larger bottle in there if you wanted to. And then we've got this nice table which is permanently mounted with 2 large leaves that fold out to either side. Stowage in here for all of your essentials and deck gear. Either side at the moment we've got the cushions on, clearly those would come off for sailing, and then beneath them we've got some cockpit lockers. So for stowage on deck, let's just move these deck cushions, and beneath that we've got a cockpit sole depth locker that goes quite a long way back, so plenty of space for lines, fenders, villies, life raft. And there's the same on the other side that the boarding ladder stows in, and shore power connections here. There's a bit more stowage at the forward end of the cockpit if we have a look here. Just aft of the companionway. It doesn't have a gas strap, it's quite a heavy door. There we go, that is a draining compartment. You can see the washboard stowage there. Just a really big bin. Probably make quite a good rope bin, although it doesn't have apertures for that. It might be on the performance one. And then you can see here, just on the deck, these mouldings, which are where you would have additional winches, deflectors and clutches if you bought the performance pack. So let's head below then. So you've got telescopic hidden companionway here. I need 2 hands to slide that up and down again. And then quite a long sliding hatch there, so you've got nice gentle steps. Coming down we've got 5 flat steps with a bit of grip tape on, but quite a nice shallow angle. 1, 2, 4, 5, there we go. And this boat has actually had the cabin sole lifted and replaced with perspex, just so that you can see the electrical system. In here we've got 2 48 volt 5 kilowatt hour batteries from Torqeedo. So that's 10 kilowatts in total, driving the 24 kilowatt total propulsion beneath the boat. And then you can see going through the hull here, that is all that you can see of the motors that drive this boat, which is pretty impressive. Right, let's have a look around. So to port of the companionway, you come down, you've got a nice big L-shaped galley, which is pretty sensible. Really nice interior design as well. So you've got solid edges, good big fiddles, and then lots of stowage. So in here we've got a really big fridge, which is also front opening, so you can get into the bottom of it easily. We've got a 2-burner Eno gas stove. Bin under the sink, a really large sink. It's a single sink rather than a double sink. I'd have been tempted to have a double sink so that you can do washing up and put some in to drain and dry. I think that's a lot easier. Bottom opening lockers here, so it's a little bit dark in there. Bit of a shame there aren't lights in there, given that there are lights just above it, but otherwise it's a really nice finish. Nicely done, and then stowage behind and behind there as well. So you've got lots of stowage there for utensils, that kind of thing. And then hidden in this locker here are some drawers for your cutlery, and then some shelves underneath it, and pan stowage below the oven as well. Right, let's move forward. And this boat is fitted out slightly unusually with dinette style saloon. So you've got a row of sort of 3 seats facing each other on either side, so you can seat 6 people really comfortably, and that's a separate dining area that you don't need to take up the walk through to the rest of the boat for. They've made a really nice feature of these big hull windows here. Looks very nice. There isn't any stowage above it. There's a small shelf below, so a little bit more sort of style and practical stowage, but you're probably not going to be using this boat for long-term cruising. This is more of a nice week in the Med, a couple of regatta weeks, maybe some club cruising if you go for the performance option. So you've got the chart table, which is really nice, which is big enough for a leisure folio of charts or to put your laptop in. And as most people work from home, or a lot of people work remotely now, having somewhere separate to work is really nice. Then you've got in these lockers here, you've got your electrics hidden away. Now this whole thing pops off so that you can get to the wiring behind them easily. But most of it is actually controlled through digital camber switching here on the touchscreen. It's not on right now, rather than hundreds of manual switches. And then you've got stowage in here for binoculars and pilot books. It's a pretty sensible little layout. Okay, so beneath the bunks you've actually got 2 more batteries in here, which I didn't show you earlier. 2 more 5 kilowatt-hour batteries in there, one above the other. This is on port side, and then at the forward end of the saloon you've got stowage, good big locker space under that one. Under this berth you've actually got more of the 48 volt distribution system in there with a little bit of stowage space. And behind this berth is actually the main electrical distribution system. So here very neatly you've got everything labelled, all of your black box bits of kit, and that's mounted on a nice neat piece of plywood on the outside of the hull. And then you've got some more sockets and things down there. So that's pretty accessible and neat. It hasn't got any hatches over it, so if you had any curious children you might need to keep them out of there. So in the forward cabin we've got an owner's cabin with a really nice big berth. There's a water tank underneath that, and then round here we've got the heads compartment, which is really nicely fitted out. So you've got a locker there for your holding tank, you've got a sink and a toilet and a separate shower cubicle here, so that's really comfortable. Either side you've got these boxes which sadly don't open, because that would have made some really useful locker space. There aren't any lockers or shelves any higher up, which is a little bit of a shame. Because for longer periods on board it would be nice to have that, although you do have this really good big wardrobe here with both hanging space, hang your towels or scarves up there, and some shelf space as well, and access to below that as well for a bit more stowage. As I mentioned, the boat's built with Helium resin, all vacuum infused, and they're just working out how you do that. Structurally, it is a grid matrix laminated into the hull, and you can see the keel bolts through there and a bilge pump. Just about see that bilge pump in the sump there. Right, and then moving aft to the two aft cabins. You've got a good sized double berth here. You'd probably sleep with your head at the forward end. This has got the cushions at the far end. Then here you've got some canvas stowage and actually a locker behind it underneath there. And then moving to the port side, you've got the same double cabin again with the stowage and the same stowage arrangements. All of this is boxed in and not accessible. Again, that's a little bit of a shame. But here you've got access panels for the electrical system and the engine motor if you have one. And there's a panel down here, so you've got really good access. And then just forwards of that on starboard side is the main heads compartment. The two aft cabins share with a separate shower cubicle aft, holding tank stowage just outboard there, and then two lockers here, and then a nice mirror and sink, and an electric sea toilet. It's all very nice. So under the companionway hatch here, companionway step, sorry, in a diesel boat you would have a diesel engine in here, but the electric version is fitted with a 5 kilowatt gen set, which fits in very neatly and will run pretty quietly because it's double insulated inside its own box and within the engine bay. So that's the First 44E. I hope you've enjoyed having a look around. She's a really nicely finished boat. She looks lovely. I feel like she's got a little bit of an identity crisis in the luxury pack because I feel like the Beneteau First, sorry, are really about performance. So I'd love to see this boat in the performance pack and really see what she's made of. Bare her teeth a little bit because I feel like that's what this boat is designed for. But this is a really nice cruising boat. She hasn't got the stowage for long distance or offshore, but then she's a lighter boat, and that's not what she's about. She's about going fast, racing and some quick cruising.